All right, today we're diving into Peter Thiel's absolutely iconic book, 0 to 1. Seriously, this is a must-read for anyone who wants to build the future because it basically challenges everything we think we know about business, competition, and what it really means to innovate.
So Thiel kicks the whole thing off with this one single, powerful question. He says it's his absolute favorite to ask in an interview, and for a good reason. It's designed to filter for original thinkers. You know, the people who see the world not just for what it is, but for what it could be. It's a tough one, right? Because it forces you to say something that might be unpopular, to stand on your own with a belief. And make no mistake, this question is the key that unlocks the entire book. It's not just some clever interview tactic. It's really a whole framework for finding those one-of-a-kind, contrarian insights that become the bedrock of every great new business.
See, the future isn't something that just sort of happens to us. No, it's built. It's built by people who have the guts to answer this very question. People who see a truth that everyone else is missing and have the courage to build a whole company around it.
So what's Thiel's own answer to his big question? Well, he says that most of us think the future is all about globalization. You know, copying things that already work and just spreading them around. But he argues that real, meaningful progress actually comes from technology, from creating brand new things. See, just spreading old ideas around only makes us compete more for the same stuff. But creating new tech, that's how we actually build a better, more abundant future for everyone.
Now, this leads us straight into the biggest myth that Thiel just wants to completely dismantle, this idea we all have that competition is a good thing for business. I mean, we're taught from day one that competition is the heart of capitalism, but Thiel says, nope, the exact opposite is true.
In economics, you basically have two extremes. On one side, you've got perfect competition. This is where businesses are so similar that nobody has any power and profits just get squeezed down to basically zero. Just think of all the pizza places on a single street. They're all in a race to the bottom. But on the other side, you've got a monopoly. A business so unique that it owns its market and can rake in profits for years and years.
Let's look at this comparison from back in 2012. The entire U.S. airline industry, all of them combined, brought in a massive $160 billion in revenue. Now look at Google. They brought in less than a third of that. And this shows a super important difference. Creating a ton of value for people is not the same thing as capturing that value for your company.
And the results are just staggering. The airlines, stuck in that brutal competition, had a profit margin of less than 1%. We're talking about 37 cents per passenger. Meanwhile, Google, the search monopoly, kept 21% of its revenue as profit. It captured over 100 times more value than every single airline in the US put together.
So this is the punchline. This is the crucial point. We think capitalism is all about competition, but it's not. Capitalism is about accumulating capital, right? But what does intense competition do? It destroys capital by grinding profits down to nothing. So if you want to build a truly valuable company, your goal has to be to escape competition and build a monopoly.
Okay, so if escaping competition is the goal, how do you actually do it? Well, this brings us to Thiel's core idea for understanding what real innovation looks like. The difference between going from 1 to n times and going from 0 to 1.
Horizontal progress is basically just copy and paste. You take something that already works and you make more of it. That's going from 1 times n. It's pretty predictable, easy to imagine. If you open another coffee shop, that's horizontal progress. And on a global scale, Thiel just calls this globalization.
But vertical progress, that's a whole different animal. This is about creating something totally new, where there was nothing before. That's going from 0 to 1. Think of it this way. If you have a typewriter and you build 100 more of them, that's 1 to n. But if you invent the word processor, that's 0 to 1. That's technology, and that's the only way to build a brand new future. The problem is, after the dot-com bubble burst back in 2000, Silicon Valley got scared. They got scared of those big, bold 0 to 1 ideas. And this new set of rules, this new dogma took over. Play it safe. Just make tiny little steps. Don't have some big grand plan. Just copy what other people are doing and try to do it a little bit better.
And Thiel says that this safe approach is exactly the wrong lesson we should have learned. He believes the real truth is actually the total opposite of those principles. It's way better to be bold than to be trivial. A bad plan is better than no plan at all. You have to find a market you can dominate, not one you just compete in. And by the way, sales and getting your product out there, that matters every bit as much as the product itself. And here's a perfect picture of what happens when you get stuck in that old way of thinking. When Square launched its little mobile card reader, did competitors invent a whole new way to pay? Nope.
They just launched a bunch of copycats in different shapes: a half moon, a cylinder, a triangle. This is where competition leads. You end up obsessing over your rivals and these tiny little differences instead of creating anything new and valuable. Okay, so we get it. We need to build a monopoly. But what does a really strong, durable monopoly even look like? What's its DNA? Well, Thiel lays out 4 key characteristics that these game-changing companies almost always have.
So here they are, the 4 big pillars. First, you need proprietary technology that's really hard for anyone else to copy. Second, network effects, where your product actually gets better and better the more people use it. Third, economies of scale, which just means your business gets stronger and more efficient as it gets bigger. And last but not least, a super powerful brand that people just automatically associate with what you do.
And when we talk about proprietary technology, we're not just talking about being a little bit better. To really break out from the pack, Thiel says your solution has to be at least 10 times better than the next best thing. Why 10x? Because just a small improvement isn't enough to get people to change their habits and switch over. You need a massive quantum leap to really grab their attention.
Network effects are also incredibly powerful, but there's a funny little paradox at their heart. To become valuable for everyone, a network has to first be incredibly valuable for its very first users. That's why Facebook didn't just launch to the whole world at once. No, it launched just for Harvard students. A network has to be super dense and essential for a small, concentrated group before it even has a chance of taking over the world.
So knowing the traits of a monopoly is one thing, but how do you actually go out and build one? This brings us to the core strategy. And Thiel's key insight here is that you can't just go and attack some huge established market head-on. You've got to be way more clever than that. The strategy is actually the opposite of what most people would think. It's simple. Start with a very small, very specific market that you can completely, totally dominate. You know, it's so much easier to take over a tiny little niche of customers who are desperate for what you have than it is to fight for a tiny little sliver of some massive, bloody competitive market.
PayPal learned this the hard way. Their first idea was to let people beam money between Palm Pilots. It failed miserably. The users were scattered all over, and they didn't really need it. But then they focused on this tiny little niche, a few thousand big-time eBay sellers who were absolutely desperate for a better way to get paid. And boom, they found their monopoly. They were serving a quarter of those sellers in just 3 months.
This is one of the most powerful, most quoted lines in the entire book, and it just perfectly sums up the whole idea. Success is all about finding a unique secret and building a unique solution around it. Failure is just getting stuck fighting the same old battles as everyone else.
And so we end up right back where we started, but with a totally new way of looking at it. The ultimate question for anyone trying to build something great isn't, how do I crush my competition? No, it's, what valuable company is nobody else building? The goal isn't just to win the game everyone else is playing. It's to find a completely new game, one that lets you create the kind of value that truly takes the world from 0 to 1.